Welcome back to our Supernatural First Watch podcast. I am your host, Kimberly, a self proclaimed sci fi nerd and fantasy geek. And today we are diving into episode number 2 of Supernatural. Fun An aptly named Wendigo. So, in case you're curious about what creature we might be encountering, I think your hint is in the title. So, like most second episodes in a brand new show, Wendigo suffers from not as good as the pilot syndrome. Really strong pilot going out for Supernatural. We really get to know our characters. We get introduced to the brothers. We're intrigued. There's a fun story. But Wendigo, unfortunately, is not nearly as strong in storytelling structure or relationship building since we are kind of still exploring the different worlds and the characters themselves. But we do get to meet our first of many supernatural creatures as we dive into the world of supernatural. So, without much ado, let's dive on in. So, if you remember at the end of the pilot, Sam and Dean were left with coordinates during their investigation trying to find their father. Of course, things have been derailed because when Sam returned home, he found his girlfriend Jessica on the ceiling in a very similar fashion to the way his mother died, but we're not sure if he knows that. And he's rescued from the fire and the flames by his brother Dean. So that's where we're at. And now we're going to rejoin the show. So you'll notice there is a previously on section for Supernatural, but unlike most shows who just make it a clip show, the previously on section actually tells a story. It starts with what happened that night, and it's in a story format to let you know where we're at and what's going on. So, what happened that night? Sam was rescued from the burning room when his mother was burning on the ceiling. And Dean is the one who helped run him out of the house. And that's kind of where we're at. And it sets the tone of the story. So, following the coordinates is where we find Sam and Dean trying to figure out where their father might be. We open with, it's bright, it's sunny, things are exciting, things are going well. It's bright, it's sunny, as I said, and Sam is approaching the grave of Jessica. However, one thing to note here is that it's incredibly bright. And that was something I noticed right away after watching the pilot episode is how bright it was and the contrast from the horror side of things, which is an indicator, of course, that this is not reality. This is actually a dream that Sam is having in terms of what's going on. Um, so it seems that Sam and Dean have spent about a week trying to find out what happened to Jessica in Palo Alto. But as we'll see moving forward in the show, we don't actually start the show with the brothers. We start with a scene in a campground. It's in Blackridge, not sure what's going on. And Blackwater, sorry, it's in Blackwater and something is amiss. A guy is contacting somebody at a campsite saying, hey, he's not going to be back very soon, but he's having a great camping trip, and then something attacks them. So we transition to our dream sequence of Sam dreaming about visiting Jessica's grave, but he wakes up in the Impala and things are not what they seem. So now we're back to the 1980s rock, which means we are back to the brothers Winchester. And Sam seems so shaken up by his dream that Dean actually offers to let him drive. And Sam is taken aback by this and he's like, wait, do I look that bad? And Dean quickly, of course, retracts the offer and they hop in the car. So this is how a lot of our episodes, I think, if I remember correctly, will move forward from this point on. We open with a teaser of what's going on in the location the brothers Winchester are about to encounter. Then we switch back to their point of view and their method of finding cases, which seems to be reading through the local obituaries and reading through local missing persons and also using the journal of their dad to find interesting cases that might be going. So, for this first case, Dean and Sam have been sent to the coordinates of Black Water. Let's see what they find. They arrive only to find out at the Lost Creek Trail Ranger Station um, that something has gone wrong in the ranger area. The ranger, of course, mistakes them for friends of somebody who's missing. So, without them even looking for it, they go to the station to try and discover more about the coordinates and uncover a case. Somebody is missing. So, they go and they visit the sister who has the last video we saw Tommy, the victim, recording on his cell phone before he disappeared. Um, and they're determined, like most people would be, to go and find their missing sibling, even though Sam and Dean are a little bit iffy on the prospect. They do a little research, mostly looking at really old school search engines prior to pretty much everyone defaulting to the big Google, and discover a pattern. Every 23 years, someone goes missing in Blackwater. Sam, at some point, managed to capture the video from Haley, and also noticed that there is a fast moving shadow on the tent wall. So, using the newspaper records, they go and visit somebody who encountered this supposed bear in 1959. After talking with them, they realize, well, it's probably not a grizzly because it was able to unlock the cabin door, roar like no man or animal, and move like lightning. When they get back to town the next morning, they find the troop of very earnest young adults ready to go and explore the forest. So they claim that they are rangers and they're joining them. When they reach the campsite, they discover, yep, there's carnage. Something has gone wrong. All of the ripped tents and damaged equipment, and then screams for help make all of them run towards the screams like crazy and like, in my opinion, every horror trope moron, because let's run towards the screams when we don't know what we're dealing with. When at the campsite, they mention a couple of other creatures it could be, including a skinwalker and a black dog, a Wendigo, or a werewolf. But we, of course, find out that it is a Wendigo with the use of some really oddly and aptly placed stick figure art on cave walls from an indigenous tribe. And that is when Dean tells the story of Wendigos, people who got lost, forced to eat human flesh, and became Wendigos. They use the Donner Party as an example. And if you don't know, the Donner Party set out on the Oregon Trail uh, for California, left too late, got caught in the mountains, and had to turn to cannibalism to make it through the winter and make it out the other side of the mountain pass. Because they ran after a human voice screaming for help and found nothing, that means it's a Wendigo. Interestingly enough, according to the Supernatural Wiki, Wendigos actually can't mimic human voices. So that would be the one thing that would be ruled out by the screaming voices. But it seems that Supernatural has begun to create its own fandom lore. So I will be talking about the local legends, which is what's creating our supernatural creatures. And I will also be talking about fandom lore, as in what are the rules within the world of supernatural when it comes to the supernatural. Like most other fantasy and sci fi shows, these rules are a conglomeration of a lot of different stories from a lot of different cultures, so not all rules are followed. For example, the vampires in Twilight get to go in the sun and sparkle, which I still can't stand. But in Buffy, depending on the story, they can either get close to sunshine, walk under a blanket, or get immolated with just the smallest peak of sunshine. So let's go back to our intrepid camping group, where after finding the markings, Sam is pissed. He's mad with Dean. He wants to leave and doesn't really care about finding this poor girl's brother, which is interesting to note. Because remember, Sam has been living the normal life for at least 2 years with no communication with the family. And Dean, in that time, presumably has been hunting with their father. So Dean replies they have to help others. It's the family business. And Sam's not interested. It's interesting to know, is Sam not interested because dad told them to? Or is Sam not interested because he just doesn't care and he wants to go back to his normal life? That's a question for us to contemplate as we move forward. Again, their argument is interrupted by cries for help. And even though Dean tells the guide, Roy, not to go after it, he runs into the dark out of the circle of safety. Of course, he's caught by the Wendigo, and we'll discover in the morning that he is very much not alive. Apparently, Wendigos hibernate and like to store fresh food, which would make sense for the 23-year pattern that they discovered in the news clippings. So they follow the trail armed with Molotovs, because that is the only way to kill Wendigos. Interestingly enough, I noted when they left to go on the search, not knowing what it was, they didn't seem to bring much with them. So, what kind of weapons do you need to hunt what you don't know what you're hunting? Even though Sam and Dean go after Roy in the morning and tell the siblings to stay at sight, they of course don't, and they follow Dean. And they find them and Tommy hanging from the ceiling of an abandoned mine, and of course cut them loose, just in time for them to get attacked by the Wendigo, and Dean tries to draw it away. Of course, it being television, that doesn't work, and the Wendigo goes after Sam and the siblings instead of Dean. Uh, All is well that ends well, though. While Tommy's friend, I believe, does not make it through the encounter, Tommy does. The family is saved. The Wendigo is immolated in some truly not so impressive early season CGI, and they make their escape. Gene states, "You know what? I hate camping," and declares once again that they are going to find Dad. But in the meantime, Sam says, "Sure," but he's driving. Some things to note. The local legend states that Wendigos date back all the way to indigenous cultures. And the word Wendigo literally means evil that devours. Of course, we don't attribute this to any particular native language, but the idea is that it is evil that devours, and it's based off of the legends of people forced to cannibalism in the woods. Other supernatural baddies. These are mentions we might have heard, or the selection of creatures that appear in the episode. So, obviously, with the title being Wendigo, we meet a Wendigo. Um, Other creatures mentioned include a black dog, a skinwalker, and a werewolf, but we don't know much about any of those except that they do exist. In the You've Seen Them Before section, we're going to dive into where you might have seen someone's face before. Oftentimes, these are actors that you might know for other roles, especially in the world of science fiction, as most of the science fiction shows over the last 25 years have been filmed in Vancouver, which means they're all pulling from the same Vancouver acting base. In this episode, you might have seen them before. Corey Monteith, in a pre-Glee role, is one of Tommy's friends, Gary. Continuity rules. Remember, they find this case because the coordinates were left in their dad's journal. My big question, of course, is how did their dad know about this particular case? And how far in advance did he plan to lead Dean, at least, on a Mary Goose chase, trying to find him when he doesn't return from a hunting trip, leaves his journal behind, but leaves coordinates for where to continue the search. As I said, this suffers a little bit from second episode syndrome, or not the pilot syndrome. Episode's not as strong, not as engaging, as not as entertaining as the pilot, but still a pretty solid outing. We establish a little bit more of the relationship between Dean and Sam. Dean feels his calling is to help people. He knows about the supernatural, and it's the family business to save people from the creatures that go bump in the night. Sam wants nothing to do with it. He wants his normal life. He wants to go back to it, even though his girlfriend is now dead. And he wants to find dad simply so he can get answers. But the question remains, is Sam wholeheartedly into the hunting business? While the first episode had a spirit, this one has a monster. So not only will we have ghosts, but we will have creatures of the night as well. And I'm intrigued, for one, to find out what other creatures will grace our screens in the upcoming episodes. Technology in the new age. We have a very old school approach, Google esque search engine. And also in the early days of the internet, where you could find anything you wanted for the TV show's storyline to progress, even though that might not have actually been possible to find online at the time. Just to put this in context, this episode aired in September of 2005. That's 4 whole years before the release of the iPod, in case you were wondering. So, one of the most fascinating things about Supernatural is that it was on the air as television was undergoing a major renovation and renaissance in terms of where it was seen, how people interacted with it, how the internet played into that, and of course, the storytelling style of prestige television. This is also the beginning of the era in which many shows were cutting down to even shorter storytelling time. If you go into the 90s, most episodes ran 43 to 44 minutes, and some shows even had what we call Euro minutes, which made the episodes almost 50 minutes long. By the time you get to the 2000s, the general TV running time was about 42 to 43 minutes, and it gets even shorter as we get further into the 2000s. So, Supernatural is a representation of its time and television storytelling, which makes it super fascinating to go back and watch. So, Dean and Sam are clearly brothers. They clearly support each other and care about each other, but they kind of aren't really clear on how they can relate to each other anymore. It's been some time since they've talked to each other. And Dean, of course, is ready and willing to follow Dad's instructions. Sam wants nothing to do with it. Dean feels the family business is their calling and they are here to help people. And that is why Dad has probably given them the coordinates so that they can go and help people. Sam, not so interested in it. And the running death toll, Brad dies, Gary dies, Roy, the guide, dies, and of course, the Wendigo dies. And uh, in what will become a huge part of the show's motif, we have some fantastic classic rock, including Hot Blooded by Foreigner, Down South Jukin' by Leonard Skinnard, and a little bit more of a modern music by the Dave Matthews Band, Out of My Hands. Up next, we have There's Something in the Water, or the one in which something is living in the lake. And that is our next episode. And I will see you next time on the Supernatural First Watch. Note to self, make some kind of conclusion. All in all, a really solid episode and a solid second episode out of the gate when we're talking about supernatural and TV shows overall. We get to know our characters a little bit more. We're introduced to the style of the show, which is teaser from somebody else, and then we'll join the brothers Winchester wherever they are in America. And learn about all kinds of fun and exciting supernatural baddies along the way. You're listening to Supernatural First Watch, and up next we have Something in the Water, or the one in which there's something living in the lake. Until next time, I'll see you in Something in the Water.